Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dill, Hugh Freeze, the Auburn Tigers take the podium during SEC Media Days, and it continues to be the program that I think is most fascinating to follow going into 2025. I don't think the casual college football fan understands the potential damage that Auburn can do in the 2025 year. They have the roster to bang with anybody in the SEC rolling into 2025. And Dill, I'm not going to get up here and say that we're going to learn a ton from these SEC Media Days because you just ain't. If you listen to enough, you start to pick up on some storylines. And one of the probably the most intriguing storyline that I caught from Hugh Freeze and Auburn's time up in front of the microphone, freaking Jourdin Crawford, man. Hugh Freeze words, not mine. This is as impressive of a freshman defensive lineman that I have seen as a coach since Robert Condici. That's saying something, especially considering the fact that a couple of years ago you had Keldrick Falk as a true freshman, who was one of the best in the country a couple of years ago. This is a position that I don't know if it's a concern, but I think Auburn fans are saying, hey, how good are we going to be in the middle of that defensive line? We know our edge defenders are dogs, and starting with Keldrick Falk. How elite are we going to be in the middle of the defensive line? To hear Hugh Freeze talk about Jourdin Crawford, he also mentioned Malik Autry. He also mentioned Malik Blockton as well. I think if you're an Auburn fan, that should fire you up because that was look. I don't have that many questions about this roster. I mean, I got a big one in terms of like what's Jackson Arnold going to be in 2025. Outside of the quarterback position, I feel really dang good about this roster. One of the questions was, do you have enough depth in the middle of the defensive line? And do you have a potential game wrecker in the middle of the defensive line? Jourdin Crawford could certainly factor into that conversation. Want to get into Jourdin Crawford, but I also have a few other storylines that I want to get into as well. Before we do, and as always, to the Auburn fans, appreciate you guys. Still going to be a really fun. This team is going to be very fun to track over the next couple of months. There are two options here, at least the way I see it. One, Auburn wins a lot of football games, and the buzz around this program, continues to grow, and this program takes a step in the SEC pecking order, which I fully think can happen. I think the other option is, Auburn's looking for a new head coach in December. I look at year 3 and say I don't think there's a bigger year 3 for a coach across the country. Appreciate the Auburn fans rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dill, I will give you the T-box here. Let's start with Jourdin Crawford. This emerging storyline. Look, we heard this type of stuff from this kid during spring practice. It sounds like it has translated rolling into fall camp. Jourdin Crawford exceeding expectations in 2025. What does that mean for this Auburn defense?
I mean, honestly, I think if you looked at this roster, you probably said, if you're being realistic, we needed one or two of these freshmen to be able to early. Because, again, I think you look at the transfers Auburn brought in, and Dallas Walker, I feel pretty good about in terms of giving you 10 to 20 snaps, maybe a game.
Yep.
James Ash and Jay Hardy, I think you have a question like, are they SEC level guys? And with that said, I think you looked, if you wanted to be able to play 5 to 6 guys, you probably needed at least one, and ideally, frankly, 2 of these young freshmen.
And it sounds like you're getting that. And one of the other unique things I got from the Hugh Freeze press conference is he did say he has confidence in the depth of the middle of the defensive line. I believe he said we're 6 deep. Now the storyline is, and I think that essentially means, look, Jourdin Crawford and Malik Autry, who are both big bodies, who are certainly capable of playing in the SEC year 1. Now the question is, all right, do we have a game wrecker? Do we have a guy that can be a presence in the middle of the defensive line? Because I think you're right. You bring in Dallas Walker, you bring in Jay Hardy, you bring in James Ash, and though even some of the veterans on this Auburn roster, I don't see top 50 NFL draft potential. When you talk about Malik Blockton going into year 2, when you talk about Jourdin Crawford, when we talk about Malik Autry, that's your game record potential dudes. If I were to put you on the spot and say, hey, who's going to be like that first team all SEC guy for Auburn up front? What's your answer here?
Well, I've been a monster believer in Malik Blockton.
You have to be.
I think he showed enough last year as a young player. You feel really good, especially if you just kind of get to SEC strong, because it felt like he was playing a little undersized last year, could maybe get moved around a bit. When he got his shots in one-on-one situations, you saw the skill, you saw the explosiveness, the athleticism. I think he's a guy, again, with another year of physical maturation. He's the guy. And I know you're excited about the freshman. I would be too if I'm an Auburn fan, because they are the type of bodies that you just don't find in the transfer portal, the type of athletes that you just can't get out of that, or out of the portal, I should say. I still think Malik Blockton's the guy who, if it's going to work, he's going to be the lead dog.
I would 100% agree. Like, you have your difference makers out on the edge. Do we have him on the inside? And I think Malik Blockton is probably that kind of. I will say this. Hugh Freeze was asked the direct question about Jourdin Crawford. And he talked about Jourdin Crawford, and he said the things I just said. He quickly went to, hey, we think Malik Blockton is going to be a dude. Wasn't even asked about Malik Blockton. I think that, and you've been banging the table for this cat pretty much all off season long. If you were to say, hey, top 10 most important players for Auburn, Malik Blockton probably making the top 10 rolling into 2025. Dill, another interesting conversation, a little bit more broad, winning in the margins. And this is really the most important conversation outside of what you get from the quarterback position. This is probably the most important conversation that you can have around Auburn rolling into 2025. I don't think, even to some Auburn fans, I don't think that they understand how close this football team was to being pretty dang good in the 2024 year. Now, I'm sure the Auburn fans looking at me like, what do you mean? We didn't even make a bowl game. We weren't even close. Well, Dill, you start looking at the numbers and say, hey, the defense last year, 4.9 yards per play allowed. That was top 25 in the country. You look at the offensive side of the football, although, I mean, at times, not good enough up front, certainly not good enough at the quarterback position. Dill, they were top 40 in the country in yards per play. You look at this and say, hey, we should have been better than what we were on the record side of things in 2024. Well, hey, what gives? Why was Auburn losing football games? Yes, the turnovers were a problem, right? 95 or 95th in turnover margin in the country. Well, Dill, fourth downs were a problem, 90th in the country, 123rd in red zone in the country, 130th in field goals percentage in the country. It was like this team from a down-to-down basis was actually pretty dang good in 2024, much better than people realize. But the small nitty-gritty stuff, when you do so many small things so poorly, that's how you get a losing season like Auburn had. You look at it and say, hey, so way better roster than what it was in 2024. And if you can clean up some of the, I don't know if I'd say silly mistakes, but if you can be better in some of those smaller moments, that's why I'm a believer in Auburn rolling into 2025. That's why I think they can be one of the more dangerous teams in this conference in the 2025 year.
And I think another thing to look at is they were really young, and it was a bit of a revolving door for the first couple years. And that's not a criticism of Hugh Freeze. It had to be. I mean, Brian Arson left him with nothing. They didn't have SEC talent. They didn't even really have like moderate Big Ten talent, I wouldn't say.
Yeah.
You needed to kind of cycle guys in and out, get a lot of guys out of the program, get a lot of guys in. And at the end of the day, you also had to play a ton of true freshmen and sophomores because they were the most talented player on that Auburn team. So I look another year, a lot more continuity. I think you see a lot of that like little stuff do get. I would inherently think with that in mind, it gets cleaned up a bit.
Hugh Freeze talked about that too. And I think that's a really good point. I mean, the first 2 years, you said it best. It was like a revolving door. It was like not very good football players. And there was also players coming in and coming out along with coaching staff. It was just the whole program was trying to find its footing during the first 2 years. Look at the depth chart here. Look, there are some transfer portal additions. There are going to be some true freshmen to play. This is completely different picture than what we saw 12 months ago when we were looking at Auburn rolling into 2024. There's a lot less color. There's still a lot more color than I think Hugh Freeze would want, but there's a heck of a lot less than the last 2 years. Little bit more continuity. I think you're right. Hey, does that allow Auburn to play better in the bigger moments?
And you get Alex McPherson back, and that was a big problem last year.
Yeah.
Having a really steady, rock-solid kicker is big if you want to kind of win on the margins and win tight games.
And that's just what it is in the SEC. Like, look, this ain't the Big 12. You ain't going to be winning by 14 points, 21 points a game. Like, every single week, if you don't play good football, and if you don't play good football at the small parts of the sport, you're going to lose. And so can Auburn be consistently better in those unique situations, red zone, field goal kicking, getting off the field on third down, moving the chains on fourth down? there's a lot of ways you could see Auburn taking a big step. Dill, I'll just add this real quick. I thought Jackson Arnold was really impressive. And like it was going to be a tough spot for him, right? I mean, coming to Auburn, he's going to have a lot of question marks about his time at Oklahoma, what went wrong. Hugh Freeze talked about it, and I think it's the biggest storyline. Like, how can we get Jackson Arnold swagger back? Like, if you get five-star quarterback play from Jackson Arnold, this offense is going to be one of the best in the country. They also talked about how they have a lot more confidence with the offensive line, especially that interior. You know, Connor, Lou, Dylan Wade, Jeremiah Wright. If you do figure out a way to get Jackson Arnold a little bit more swag, get a swagger back, for lack of better terms, I think you're going to see this Auburn offense take a monster step in 2025.
But even you said it, just like his demeanor up there wasn't like somebody was bitter or like again, Oklahoma, they kind of screwed him a little bit. Like
completely screwed him. Nobody talks about that enough.
And they had poor coaching staff, but like you didn't hear anything like, oh, Brett Venables sucks or this guy. Like it was just like, I mean, just the demeanor of what you kind of want to hear. Because if you did get up there and it was bitter, that would be like somebody who doesn't feel like he's going to have another good year, and maybe is like.
I'll say this still, and this is cliche, and I get it, but this seems like a guy that really feels like he has a fresh start. It is probably there was no animosity or looking in the rearview mirror. I know that is not expert analysis right there. That's kind of the vibe I got. I thought it was really, really impressive how he navigated some, I don't know if you'd say difficult questions, but obviously questions about what happened at Oklahoma, because you're right. Like, you put me up in the microphone and asked me about what went wrong, be like, yeah, my wide receiver sunk. My offensive coordinator got fired halfway through the season. Jackson Arnold was impressive. We'll cut it out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. To the Auburn fans, buckle up, man. I think it's going to be such a fun season for this football team. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.